The young couple and their son have only the time it takes a locksmith to change the locks, 10, maybe 15 minutes, to grab what they can. They lost the house after falling behind on their payments. Now they'll have to make arrangements with the new owner, a bank, to come back later for the rest of their belongings.
Across the country, bankruptcies and foreclosures are at record levels. The laws covering those two procedures can sometimes help you, and many times there are some consequences. Joining us with the pros and cons, please welcome Mike Durrschmidt, a bankruptcy attorney, and Richard Melamed, a foreclosure attorney. All right, so, you know, while we have the finger pointing going on, people say, well, it's because of the economy. What you all know is for a long time, a lot of what happens in bankruptcies and foreclosures, we can point the finger at ourselves.
Often we can.
Yeah. Doesn't mean that, you know, the person's not hurting and suffering, but this has taught us a very big lesson.
Well, I think the reason that people get into these troubles are as varied as there are people that get into trouble, because they lose their jobs, they have health care issues, they have
and we
problems
understand
controlling
that can happen
themselves.
to any of us. Yeah.
And I think, you know, what you can't control your employment, you can't control your health, but I think you can control your expenditures. And the thing that everybody tells you is you've got to live under your means. And as you said earlier, we've used credit as an extension of our income, and when we do that, we get into a spiral from which we can't recover.
All right, let's talk about just what the laws are meant to do with bankruptcy and then how foreclosure works as well. So let's start with bankruptcy.
Well, I think the biggest problem that people face with bankruptcy is probably twofold. One is they don't recognize the problem early enough and go speak to somebody early enough to plan for it.
You don't wait till you're completely out of money and...
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing is that oftentimes they don't pick the right professional. In other words, if you're going to file bankruptcy, you want a bankruptcy lawyer. Those laws are very specialized. You don't take your car to get a transmission fixed at the same place you get your tires. So you want to go get somebody that's specialized in the business, that knows what they're doing, and you want to do it early. Texas has got great exemption laws. You don't want to be borrowing against your home equity. You don't want to be borrowing against your 401k to pay debts that you can discharge in a bankruptcy case. So you need to go talk to the lawyer, an accountant, early in the process to understand what your options are before you've leveraged everything that you could otherwise retain through the bankruptcy process.
Okay, and with foreclosure, when do you consider foreclosure, and what does that really mean? Doesn't necessarily always mean that you can walk away scot-free.
Well, that's true. Of course, the borrower doesn't really decide when there's going to be a foreclosure. The lender does.
Yeah.
But
or when you decide, you know what, this is what we're going toward, this is going to happen.
That's right. But the truth is you see it coming. You see that you are starting to fail to pay all of your debts as they come due. Generally speaking, your home is probably the last debt you default on. So the trick to the whole thing is when you start to see that you're in danger of defaulting on your mortgage, that's the time to contact your mortgage servicer. You have a number of options early on. If you fall behind, they can reinstate, they can do a workout plan with you, a repayment plan. There's a number of things, but the longer you wait, the fewer options you will have.
Right, right. And because we're in unprecedented times, are we seeing some changes? For example, let's say someone says, I could afford my loan up until that ARM came in. Can we go back to that time before the ARM came in? Or seeing that if you had a 30-year note, can you make it a 40-year note? If somebody can afford the 40-year, not the 30-year. Are we seeing banks work with people more? Because it seems like, you know, especially in the beginning across the country, we saw it's like, you got to go.
Well, to the extent that the bank can work with the people, they will. Servicers have set up loss mitigation departments that are bigger than their foreclosure departments. And that sends a signal that they want to work something out. But you have to keep in mind that the lender made a contract. He put forward the money that the borrower wanted to borrow.
And we made a contract too.
And we made a contract to pay it back. And so if you can't pay it back, they want to look at their options and their alternatives, because maybe a lesser payback avoids a total loss.
Okay.
And the lenders know that.
We have a couple of questions from the audience. Let's go to you, ma'am, right over here.
Yes, what tips do you have for people to prevent going into bankruptcy when they already feel the heat?
Well, I think that one of the things you've got to do is you've got to cut back significantly, because generally if it's an extension of credit to your income that we've talked about, you've got to cut back your income, or you've got to cut back your expenditure to less than your income, because you've now got to pay back that debt that you've already accrued. The thing that you've got to do is you've got to pay attention to the things that are important, the house and the car. And I think a lot of places where people get in trouble is they'll This month we'll skip the car payment. Next month we'll skip the mortgage payment. They think that at some point in time in the future they'll catch that up, but they can't. And so what they're doing is they're skipping the car payment or the house payment to make the credit card payment, and therefore everything then becomes jeopardized. So you've got to prioritize, and the things that become important, you've got to keep those. If the house is important, if the car is essential, you've got to pay those first.
And yes or no, can you file bankruptcy if you're unemployed?
You can file bankruptcy if you're unemployed. Your options are very limited because the reorganization, there's two aspects. There's a liquidation and a reorganization. Reorganization without any income is not possible. A liquidation where you're basically turning your pockets inside out and giving your assets to your creditors is still possible without income.
All right, our next question.
I have a relative who lost his job about 8 months ago. He has been selling everything that he has just to keep up with the home mortgage payments. He has fallen behind for the last 2 months, and he went to the bank and they restructured his loan to where they allow him to miss one payment and then restructure the rest of the payments evenly. He was unable to keep up with that plan, and so he went back to the bank and they gave him a big application which he had to fill entirely, and supposedly to redo the mortgage payments, and he's afraid that he's going to lose his house, and so he doesn't know.
So you want the answer to that question?
Yes.
Okay, get in contact with him. Okay. yeah, because it gets really detailed. I guess without you really seeing all the details, it's hard to give an actual answer. But, you know, that's what they do. They're experts in this, and so that may be something that he needs to do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And to find out how to get in touch with Richard or Mike at our website, greatdayhouston.com is where you can do that. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, fiscal conservative, deregulation, finance reform, they're all terms you'll hear coming from candidates on the campaign trail. But what do they mean? And when it comes to parties, what do they stand for and who do they represent? We'll break it down after the break.
Riceville Adult Ministry invites you to its Health Expo and Fair, Pathways to Health, Caring Makes a Difference. It takes place Saturday, September 3rd, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Riceville Mount Olive Baptist Church, 11539 South Gessner. The group provides bi-weekly adult fellowships for ages 50 years and above and navigator services for those underserved in the community. For more information, call 713-778-0992 or visit riceville.org.